So can we move to the second movement of
Yes.
this one? Because
Yes.
that's a very unique, very strange kind of piece for me in a way.
The second?
Yeah, second.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, lots of dotted rhythms
Yes,
and
yes.
syncopation and.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, you know, also if we compare different works of Schumann, we see a certain tendency. And tendencies are that dotted rhythms, for example, and syncopations is almost his daily bread. He uses syncopations a lot and dotted rhythms a lot in a lot of his works. And so, to me personally, it's no surprise that this movement is also in between somehow, in between, because maybe when he thought about something so sublime, because this is one of the most sublime works by Schumann, and
Yes.
ending it probably with such a pompous movement would have been a little bit banal. So I imagine that he could really imagine this as the ending, as the end relief, almost like in the Liszt Sonata, which ends in nothing. And so he needed, of course, something different in between. And the between movement is a very, of course, a very majestic, very full of fire, but also nobility, and there is a celebratory element, I would say. There is a celebration in it. You know, in this I think it's very different, the music of Chopin and Schumann, that in Schumann there is often a reference to the world. So, of course, when you talk about celebration, it's not something only personal, it's something more, you know, in society. So this, and that's why it has such an orchestral quality. It's very full of color, very full of also texture, and the range is very wide. Whereas very often in Chopin, the case is more of an inner exploration, which happens also in Schumann. But I think in Schumann there is more also this element of Feierlich, and also Feierlich in the Bürgerschaft, so in the citizenship, in the society, which is also a very typical, I think, German trait, to be inserted in the world, not to be just outside of the world, to be in. And so I think this movement is especially a movement of representation of what happens in the world. Somehow, you know, different voices, different elements, canons, syncopations, responses. So different voices that create a larger texture, almost like in a chorale by Bach. Like this could be, you know, very choir-like, just in a wide. In a more celebrative aspect. And then there is the middle section. This is a clearly ABA. And then the middle section is again like Romance, Lieder ohne Worte, a Lied ohne Worte, so like a song without words. Always with some strange, with some little bit eclectic elements, eccentric elements to it, but generally it's a very heartfelt moment, I would say. And then there is slowly the coming back to the original theme, and then of course we have the ending, the very famous, let's say, crazy explosion of joy. I would say.
How do you solve the technical difficulty in playing the last part of the second movement?
Well, you pray. I think it's a good way to pray. I think what is important here is to maybe think more about the first and not so much. Like to think more about the first one, and then the last one is almost as a consequence. Yes, so like when you have this kind of gesture, then it's, I think it also resembles more, is more free somehow. I don't think this part should be you know, forced. I think it should be very light and very lively. And I think this kind of gesture helps. It's almost as if you're trying to get rid of something instead of forcing it. So you try to, and also it resembles what he writes, which is, you know, this legatura a due. So it's, I think in all ways it sounds better, and then of course, trying to be careful with the, I mean, trying to feel the distance even without playing. I think it's probably a good exercise for everyone. Try to really feel with jumps. It's always good to feel distance without playing.
Interesting.
Yeah.